Okay. Thank you everybody for joining. Tonight's class is dedicated in honor of all the Jewish people, wherever they may be, especially in the land of Israel, especially those who need rescuing, especially those who are on the front lines. And tonight's class is also sponsored in the merit of Asher ben Esther and Matan ben Esther. They should have everything that they need, all the blessings, Hatzlacha and Bracha, Yeshua's, Shidduchim, everything good that they need for them and their entire families. Let's get into it. So this week is a special Shabbos. This Shabbos is the Shabbos that precedes the month of Shvat. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the idea of Shabbos Mevarchim, which means the Shabbos that blesses the new month, is about, and we will also, God willing, discuss some special things that occurred on the first day of the month of Shvat in Jewish history. So let's get started. So Shabbos Mevarchim is the Shabbos that blesses the new month. Traditionally, in a synagogue on Shabbos morning, before the prayer of Musaf, before the special Shabbos prayer, after the reading of the Torah, the entire congregation stands up, we hold the Torah, and we make a blessing and ask God to bless the new month. That is the service that we're discussing, and therefore the Shabbos is called the Shabbos that blesses the new month. But to take a step back in Jewish history, the Torah tells us that Rosh Chodesh, the first of the new month, is different than than a different type of holiday that's also based on the calendar, and that is Shabbos. Shabbos, every Jew knows when Shabbos is. Shabbos is the seventh day of the week, no matter what, that's how it works. However, the first Shabbos, the first day of the new month is not determinable by the Jewish people as a whole. It has to be done by a Beth Din, by a Beis Din, by the Jewish court, specifically the Sanhedrin, the high court of the Jewish people in Jerusalem. Now, seemingly, this doesn't really necessarily need to happen. If the moon has a cycle, and the month is based on the moon, then why can't we just say, okay, there's a new moon, that's how it works? But no, the Torah gives a specific instruction and actually in next week's Torah portion, how to do it. So let's talk a little bit about how this works. So there are the average cycle of the moon is actually 29 and a half days. It's not exactly 30 days, it's 29 and a half days. So Rosh Chodesh is always going to be when the new moon appears, which means that what happens is the moon actually makes a cycle, and then the moon is completely covered. You cannot see the moon for the last day of the month, and then there's like the birth of the new moon, there's a new sliver of the moon, and that's how you know it's Rosh Chodesh. So what would happen is either the 30th or the 31st day, depending, will be the new month. Again, it's 29 and a half days. So if you see it on the 29th day, then the 30th day will be the new month. If you see it on the 30th day, then the 31st day will be the new month. If you see it on the 29th day, then the 30th day will be the new month, etc., etc. So basically, the month could either be 29 or 30 days. It cannot be, we don't have in lunar months, you cannot have 31 days. It doesn't work. It's only 29 and a half day cycles. So either the 30th day is the new month, the 30th day is the first of the new month, or the 31st day. I hope that was clear. So what happened is the Beth Din, the Sanhedrin, the high court in Jerusalem, they had astronomers who would determine when you could expect the next moon to appear, and then they would the sages would sit there and they would wait for witnesses. You have to have two witnesses, kosher witnesses, which means that they are not related to each other or have any other biases for why they would want the moon to come out. Maybe we'll discuss that another time. And then they would appear to the court. The court would interrogate them, essentially, not interrogate them in any demeaning way, but they would ask them certain questions. What did the moon look like? Where do you see it? Etc., etc. If the witnesses' testimony matched up, the Beis Din the court, the Sanhedrin, the High Court in Jerusalem would and make an announcement, and they would say, Mekudosh, Mekudosh. The month is sanctified, and that day is then Rosh Chodesh. And then there's special sacrifice that would be brought into the temple, and now there's a new month. So it's very important, because that's when Passover is going to be based on the new month, right? So if Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the month of Nisan, the first day, 50 is that day, 15 days later is Passover, which means 14 days later, all the Jewish people have to come to Jerusalem and bring a Passover offering. And the same thing applies for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. All Jewish holidays are based on the day of the month. So therefore, and again, you can't know in advance because it's only based on the rabbinical court. There, in the times of the temple, and until it was actually post-temple even, there was no calendar. You had to know when the court in Jerusalem declared the new month. However, later, after the destruction of the temple, the Sanhedrin was eventually displaced. There was no longer a Sanhedrin, a high court in Jerusalem, and Hillel the elder, who was the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was the one who wrote the Mishnah. If you want to know more about these important people, I would suggest you tune in to our Tuesday class, or you could check on the archive. We've discussed some of these characters in the past, so that's a plug for our Tuesday class. So this Rabbi Hillel, also known as Hillel II, not the famous Hillel the Elder, but this is his grandson, a descendant of his, he established the set calendar the way we have it today. And essentially that calendar then had the averages, so therefore you would have 29 days, then 30 days, 29 days and 30 days each month, because again, it's a 29.5 day cycle. So therefore you can't just say, and again, it's not exact. Sometimes there is 30 and they back up, but it's a whole calculation. It's a very complex system. And that is the calendar we follow today. So therefore, this mitzvah of sanctifying the new month does, unfortunately, because of a lack of a Sanhedrin, does not exist today. So therefore, the sages enacted this idea of Shabbos V'varchim, of the Shabbos before the new month, and this Shabbos has a similar idea. This ceremony that we discussed, of everybody stands up in synagogue. I'm sure many of you have been present when we've done this here in Duluth or any other synagogue around the world. You stand up, you hold the Torah, and they announce the new month. In many synagogues, the custom is actually they announce when the actual birth of the new moon is based on the astrological calculations. And so it's a certain time of day. We say when it's going to happen in Jerusalem. So, for example, if you'll say something like it's going to happen 4 a.m. and 32 minutes and 30 parts, which is a few seconds, and in Jerusalem local time. So whatever that equals in Minnesota, I'm not sure. You could do the calculations. What time you could see the new moon here? I'm sure you could Google it, and that's what we make that announcement, and then we say that with the new month, and we make the announcement, the blessing. We say the new month. In this case, we're going to say the month of Shvat is going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever the day is. I haven't checked the calendar yet, and then. Or sometimes it is 2 days, by the way. If Rosh Chodesh falls on the 30th day, then if there is 30 days, then that also is Rosh Chodesh, but we'll talk about that another time. And we say when Rosh Chodesh is going to be. In this way, this is kind of a similar idea that we're announcing when the new month is, then you know when the holidays that month are, etc., etc., etc. So it's a very similar idea. And therefore, that is why we stand up, just like the Sanhedrin, when the Sanhedrin would give their sanctification, everybody stand up. So with similar idea, we stand up. And in fact, we have a very famous Jewish rabbi of the 19th and early 20th century, Rabbi Yosef Rosen, also known as the Rogatchover Gaon. He was a genius, had a photographic memory. He literally could not forget anything he ever saw or learned. And he has a very interesting question. And his question is, how come there are 6 blessings that we bless the new month with in this ceremony of Birchas HaChodesh, of blessing the new month, versus in the Musaf prayer that we bless the new month on Rosh Chodesh, on the actual day, in the Musaf prayer, there are 12 blessings. So he asks a very interesting question. Why are there 12 blessings in the Musaf prayer? If we're blessing the new month, there should be like a standard liturgy, right? That you bless, whenever you bless the month, these are the 12 things that you say, or these are the 6 things that you say. How come we're picking and choosing different ones? So why do we do, before we get to why we do 6, let's go to why we do 12. The reason we do 12 is because there are 12 months of the year. In fact, some Siddurim have a 13th blessing in a leap year, because in a leap year there is an extra month. We've discussed this, I'm sure, in the past, that if we want to make sure Passover is in the spring, the Torah tells us that Passover has to be in the spring. So therefore, if we see that there's only 354 days in a lunar calendar, there's 365 days in a solar calendar. So therefore, if you don't add a month, then eventually the lunar calendar will no longer be in sync with the solar calendar, which is how the seasons go. The seasons are based not on the moon, but on the sun. So therefore, it's important that every 2 or 3 years, we add a month in order that we should catch up to the solar calendar, essentially, and make sure Passover always stays in the spring. So in fact, we see that some liturgies actually have, in a year that there's a leap year, we actually add one extra blessing, because every month has a blessing. We're blessing in this month, we're blessing every month of the year. However, when it comes to this, the reason we do 6 blessings is because technically it's 29 and a half days. So if we say that the month has only 29 days, you kind of have a half a month. It's not an exact month. So therefore, the Rogachover Gaon, Rabbi Yosef Rosen, he explained that we're saying that not every single month there we fulfill our obligation to consecrate a month when you're consecrating it early. Again, based on the calendar, you need to have 29 and a half days, and then the Sanhedrin would look for a new moon. So if you say there's only 29 days, the way we do our calendar now, then it can't be that this is the way the Sanhedrin would have done it, because they would have waited an extra half a day. So therefore, since we're not always exact on the calendar, therefore only 6 months of the year it works out. Again, based on if you do 6 months 30 and 6 months 29, therefore only 6 months a year is it similar to the way the Sanhedrin would calculate the month. So therefore, we only do 6 blessings. Very interesting idea, very unique style. The Rogachover Gaon was very famous for his unique style of analyzing. So he has this very unique idea of why we do 6 versus 12. But the point of this whole idea of why we're bringing this up is because we see here that this is connected to the idea of the Sanhedrin. In other words, we're announcing the new month. It's not just that we're blessing the month because we have nothing better to do on Shabbat morning, but the idea is that we are blessing the new month similar to the way the Sanhedrin would declare a new month and letting everybody know when the next holidays are. Now, the word Rosh Chodesh, means that the head of the month, similar to Rosh Hashanah, which means the head of the year, not the beginning of the year, but the head. And the idea is explained in many places that the reason we use the head of the month or the head of the year is because just like the head includes all the vitality of the body comes through the head, so too all the vitality of that month is included in that day, or all the vitality of the year is included in the Rosh Hashanah. In this case, Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the new month. So therefore, on this Shabbos coming up, we already are getting ready for the month of Shvat. It's all included in this day, Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, we're going to discuss a little bit about Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Rosh Chodesh Shvat is a very unique history. In Deuteronomy, chapter 1, verse 3, it says, "And it came to pass in the 40th year," meaning the 40th year of the Jewish people being in the desert, in the 11th month. The 11th month is the month of Shavat. Again, there are 12 months. Nisan is the first month because that was the first time the Jewish people sanctified the moon in preparation for Passover. So actually, Rosh Hashanah is in the 7th month. Maybe we'll discuss that another time. Why is the new year start with the 7th month? But we'll talk about it another time. So the 11th month, therefore, is Shavat. On the first of the month, meaning Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Moses spoke to the Jewish children of Israel according to all that God had commanded him regarding them. And it continues. So Moses starts his famous speech. He spoke for an entire month before his passing. His passing was 1 month and 7 days following the beginning of the speech on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. And this is what it says about Moses' speech. After he had smitten Sichon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Cheshvan, and Og, the king of Bashan, who dwelt in Ashtaroth in Edrei. Okay, so after Moses smote Sichon and Og, who were two giants and kings and leaders of two nations who were out to get the Jewish people, Moses got rid of them, and then Moses started his speech. So Rashi, the foremost commentator on the Torah, right away comments on this. Why is it important to tell us that Moses spoke after he destroyed Sichon and Og? If I was going to say a very historic event, and I give a date, it's not really relevant what happened before. You can look up in the history books what happened before. So there must be a reason why the Torah is telling us a date, and then the Torah is telling us what Moses did. There must be a connection to what Moses did and what he's about to say. So Rashi explains. Moses said, "If I rebuke them before they enter the part of the land of Israel, they will say, 'What claim has this man on us? What good has he ever done for us? He has come only to vex us and to find some pretext, for he does not have the power to bring us into the land.'" So again, Moses is not going to go into the land of Israel. He's telling the Jewish people right before he passes away. He's speaking to them, and right before they go into the land of Israel, Moses is giving them his last final speech, and Moses is thinking, what if I tell the Jewish people, what is he going to do? He's going to rebuke them. That's what a person does before they pass away. A Jewish leader, he tells them, you've made some mistakes, you have to repent, you have to do the right thing going forward. So Moses says, if I don't do anything for them, they're just going to say, oh, he's just angry at us. He's angry that we're going to the land of Israel. He doesn't get to go, so he's just yelling at us. So so Moses says, I have to do something for them first. Therefore, he waited until he had defeated Sichon and Og before them and had given them possession of their land, and only afterwards did he rebuke them. So he says, I'm going to do them a favor. First, he's going to destroy these nations. He gave the Jewish people this land that was extra, that was outside the land of Israel, or technically the land of Canaan at that time. So this is now going to be part of the Jewish people's inheritance, these lands that he helped crush them after they threatened the Jewish people. Moses says, now that I did something good for them, now I have something to stand on. So Moses is going to speak to the Jewish people. He's going to rebuke them about, what is he going to rebuke them about? Of course, he's going to rebuke them about the fact that they had sinned in the golden calf. And he says the only way I could do that is first I have to do them a favor. So what is the story of let's take a step back. What's the story of the defeat of Og, the king, and Sichon? So the Talmud in Brachos, page 54b, discusses this story, that the Torah does not tell us the entire story of Og, of this giant. Rather, the Torah hints at it, and the rest of it is transmitted by the oral tradition. So the Gemara relates as follows. What happened? Og said, how big is the Jewish camp? He said, they told him the Jewish camp is 3 parsas long. Every parsa is approximately 2 miles, so about 6 miles long. So he said, okay, I'm going to find this. He was a giant. He was really a giant and strong person, which is why he was able to be a king of a nation. And he was able to, he had a physical dominance. So he grabbed a mountain. He uprooted a mountain that was 3 parsas long, and he brought it upon his head, and he's going to throw it at the Jewish people, and that's it. They're done. And a grasshopper was on it and started to bite him, and then he dropped the mountain and it fell on him. A whole long story the Talmud goes through, and then it says that the story concludes that Moses was 10 amos tall, and he jumped 10 amos, and he had a stick that was 10 amos tall, again 10 cubits, which is approximately 18 feet. Maybe we've discussed before this whole idea of how tall really was Moses. At any rate, he goes and he hits him, and he dies. So Moses goes and kills Og, and the threat to the Jewish people of Og and this giant is put to bed. And only then, after this whole story, does Moses feel he has the authority and the ability to rebuke the Jewish people. The second thing we have here, the second similar idea, which really is the first thing, is we have a story of how the world was created. The Zohar and the Medrash discuss that every single letter in the Torah every single letter wanted to be the letter that God is going to create the world with. Which letter is the Torah going to start with? Whichever letter God picks the world is going to be created with. So every letter comes and presents its case, and God only took the letter base. And we all know the Torah starts, Bereshis bara Elokim. In the beginning, God created. So letter base, Bereshis. Why did God pick Bereshis? Why not Aleph, the first letter? The reason is Aleph stands for Ur, for curse, and Beis, the letter Beis, stands for Bracha, which means blessing. And God wanted to create the world with a blessing and not with a curse. So then the $1 million question is, if that's the case, that Aleph has such a negative connotation, why does the Ten Commandments start with the letter Aleph, Anochi? Why don't we start with the letter Beis? And our sages tell us that Anochi, the word Anochi means I am the Lord your God. That is teaching us not to believe in idolatry and not to worship idolatry. And it's kind of a rebuke to the Jewish people that I am the Lord your God. Then eventually the next commandment, right? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So it's the positive side of it, but it's a rebuke. So therefore, God says, if I'm going to create the world, we're getting ready for the rebuke of the Ten Commandments, I need to start off with a blessing. That's the only way it's going to be accepted. And Moses learned from God and from the Torah, because Moses' whole identity was the Torah. We know the Torah is called the Torah Tziva Lana Moshe. That Moses teaches us the Torah. Moses and the Torah are one and the same as far as the transmission of the Torah all comes from Moses. So Moses learned from the Torah the same way the Torah has to start with the letter Beis, with blessing, in order to get to the Aleph, which has a negative connotation, and rebuke, have to start off with doing somebody a favor. And really, we know that every single Jew possesses a spark of Moses. And the only way that if we are going to rebuke our fellow Jews, which again doesn't mean rebuke in the literal sense, but if you want to help another Jew understand that the Torah is eternal, the Torah is true, and therefore we have to follow the Torah, you can't do it without first doing that Jew a favor, without first making sure you're helping that fellow Jew. If they see that you're invested in them, that you're invested in their well-being, they'll understand, okay, this person really has something good to tell me. They want what's best for me. If you realize that, then your words will be accepted. And this is the lesson that the Jewish people, we learn from Moses, that Moses learned from the Torah, that God himself did, that if you want your words to be accepted, if you want people to take you seriously, you have to first, you can't just be negative and preachy and standing on a soapbox, but you have to make sure that they understand that you are really looking out for their best interests, that you are going to take care of them. You'll be there when they need you, you'll be there, and then only then will your words be accepted. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Next week, I will not be available to do the class, but we will take a break for next week. We'll continue the week after that, God willing. So thank you very much for joining. Have a good Shabbos. We'll see you when we see you.